Hello, Hugh Grant fans, and welcome to Hugh's News, a Taking Hugh for Granted bonus podcast. Hugh's News aims to keep you right up to date with everything Hugh Grant, from an announcement he signed on to do a new project, right down to him doing a particularly saucy tweet. If it's big Hugh Grant news, we want you to know about it. The big news today is Hugh Grant went to Comic-Con. I'm Diggory Waite, and to discuss this with me, I'm joined by my fellow Horse and Hound correspondent, Oscar Beardmore. Oscar, how the bloody hell are you doing today, mate?
I'm very well, Diggory. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. It feels good. It feels like we're doing this on a more regular basis at the moment. There's just so much bloody Hugh Grant news happening that it just feels like the podcast is just basically back to where it was, back at its best.
I know. I mean, you would think that this was a quiet period, the summer, you know. But it seems like, yeah, we are back on the airwaves well and proper, which is great fun.
Yes, with semi-regularity as well, much like Hugh Grant will soon be on our screens with semi-regularity. Do you reckon that makes me think, actually? Because obviously we've got Dungeons & Dragons coming up. We've got the fucking weird Frosties film coming up as well. We've also got, obviously, Wonka, which is still not confirmed that he's going to be that. But there's loads of shit down the line.
And Operation Fortune.
Operation Fortune, of course, after they've got rid of the Ukrainians in it. Not in that way. But I wonder whether they won't do another death to 2022, will they?
I think that ship has sailed now.
I think so. We can see it, going off into the night. Maybe we should get onto today's big piece of news. Hugh Grant went to this year's Comic-Con. What do you know about Comic-Con?
Well, I was hoping I was going to ask you that, because the answer is not a lot. But it's the biggest kind of comic book festival based in San Diego, is my understanding. And it's the first time that Hugh Grant has been invited to it, obviously because he's normally doing things like Sense and Sensibility, not Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically the biggest nerdy convention in the world. And now that like Marvel has taken off and all the superhero films and stuff, like loads of people go to it, loads more than ever. And it's really big. So something like Dungeons & Dragons, a new movie, is the perfect thing for it. It does feel like a big nerdy convention for big fat nerds is the last place that Hugh Grant would want to be, which is why I was so surprised that he actually went there. So the big thing, I suppose, for people who are excited for Dungeons & Dragons like ourselves was the trailer. They released a trailer for it. What did you think about the trailer?
Here's the thing. We're a team of thieves. And when you do this, you're bound to make enemies. Sometimes those enemies come looking for revenge.
I thought it looked really, really exciting. I don't know about you, but we've got. I think we've got the sort of perfect dynamic. Someone who hasn't played Dungeons and Dragons and someone who has. So you're like the expert, and I'm like the guy who doesn't really know what's going on and coming at this like Hugh Grant would have done, like not having any clue. Really, the premise. Well, I know the premise, but I don't really know the sort of tactics and the strategy and all the kind of nerd stuff that goes along in the background. But it's a really fun trailer, and you really get a sense of the comedy that's going to be in it, and I think it's going to suit Hugh perfectly. And the popularity of this trailer is crazy. Like, this is going to be a big film. This trailer was released like a week ago, and it has 17 million views on YouTube.
Oh my God. Wow.
Like, this thing is going to be...
It's going to pop off.
It's going to pop off. But yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, so I have to be honest, I've played Dungeons & Dragons, but I don't think I will know all the ins and outs like other people will. I've seen some of the comments from real Dungeons & Dragons fans, and you're like, oh my God. And there's like videos being like, analysing the Dungeons & Dragons film. Here's all the 148,000 Easter eggs we've seen. And there's something like stuff like, there's a dragon in it. Makes sense. And it's spitting, instead of fire, it's spitting like mud. And everyone's like, oh my God, they brought the mud dragon. I think something like that. I don't bloody know. So it's all very exciting. Anyway, that's by the by. What I would say is it does look action-packed. It does look really quite funny, which is good. And something that made me feel better about it is Hugh Grant said in one of his interviews at Comic-Con, he was like, listen, I got this script through. I thought, Dungeons and Dragons, I don't do shit like this. Like, this isn't me. And he'd read the script and he thought, that's hilarious. This is really genuinely very funny. He even said, that it was like they'd been brought up on Monty Python, which I think for Hugh Grant, as a staunch British Englishman himself, to talk about such a comedic cornerstone for British comedy and say that this film was at all like that, I think is actually a really big thing. So it'd be interesting to see if it does live up to that hype.
Definitely. And talking of Easter eggs, Diggs, it's quite funny you mentioned that, because I feel like you talk about Easter eggs on this podcast quite a lot. And there was a good interview that came out with Chris Pine and Hugh Grant, where Chris is like describing what an Easter egg is to Hugh, who clearly doesn't know. I mean, clearly Hugh hasn't listened to our podcast, otherwise he would know. But
yeah,
that I guess for people who don't know what an Easter egg is, it's kind of like little gems within the film that only like hardcore fans would get. And I think obviously Dungeons and Dragons is like the nerdy stuff where there are a million little references within the kind of grander themes of the film that you're like, that's for those hardcore fans. And it's like, I don't know what a Hugh Grant Easter egg would be. I guess like, they have to put a Hugh Grant Easter egg in Dungeons and Dragons. There have to be like a reference to like Notting Hill or like Bridget Jones's Diary or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be so sick, because I suppose what would be a Hugh Grant Easter egg is it in Notting Hill? Don't they reference that he had an American girlfriend? Yes. They mention, I think, is it in that one? And I think what they're referencing is his girlfriend or wife in Four Weddings and a Funeral. Oh no, they might even say his American wives. They might be. Do you know that might be an Easter egg where it's like, because they say it's not a sequel to Four Weddings and a Funeral, but it's definitely like they say it's a spiritual sequel, or whatever. But that might be a little Easter egg in there. That might be known as an Easter egg for Hugh Grant fans. The other Easter egg for us is things like he always seems to call like people that he is affectionate to Bunny.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is quite a fun one. That's one. So basically, the universe is our like collection of these Easter eggs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Him always wanting to fucking kill Ben Whishaw or shag him. The extremes of emotion that are going on as well.
Maybe Ben Whishaw will just turn up in Dungeons and Dragons, and Hugh will like put a sword through his throat.
Yeah, that'd be sick. I'd love that. That'd be really cool. I mean, I wonder if they would do that. Like Orlando Bloom in a film called Black Hawk Down. You're like, oh, sick, Orlando Bloom's in this film. And he immediately dies. And you're like, okay, sick, Orlando Bloom's not in this film anymore. It'd be like that. And that'd be fun. So you mentioned that you'd seen some of his comments at Comic-Con. Did you see anything else that Hugh Grant said or anyone said about the film that you enjoyed?
Yes, Diggs. There was an extremely saucy comment that it had everyone rolling on the floor laughing. I think he was doing an interview with Entertainment Weekly, I believe, and they're sat around a sofa and they're sort of the cast are going through their Dungeons and Dragons experiences and whether they grew up playing, etc., etc. And, you know, Chris Pine had never really played, his nephew had played, other stars had played, and then they get to Hugh and they're like,
I was about to say, I'm dying to know if Hugh has ever played D&D.
Well, I was a dungeon master. But it was more S&M and less D&D. There we go. Hey! It's the English version.
This then became sort of a theme throughout the weekend. They were asked more questions about this. They said, oh, Hugh, have you ever played? And he said, no, but me and Chris Pine are going to play tonight alone, naked, in my trailer, things like that, and it just kept going. I mean, some of the stuff, I don't know how many of these things you've seen, but it's really interesting to see them when they do these, because they've got the party of 4 or 5 people, like the main characters, and Hugh, and it's really interesting because you'll see all these roundtable discussions, and Hugh he strikes such a creepy uncle might be the worst way to say it, but he does strike a very fascinating figure. Maybe it's the awkward uncle. It's like the sort of like, oh God,
this guy's come along for the ride. Who is this guy?
Exactly. He's just sort of like shuffling in.
Apart from he's incredibly famous.
Exactly. And the wittiest and funniest of the lot, and best looking, but anyway, and most talented. But anyway, but he's always, so check it out. He's always sat on the edge. He's always seemed to be asked questions last. And whenever he starts speaking, the others seem to squirm. And I think maybe my favourite of this, and talking about the whole S&M Dungeons and Dragons thing, they're asked they did this big discussion in front of an audience of people, and there was this Q&A, and this kid stands up. He can't be older than 8 years old. And he says, He says, he asked the cast if they could keep one souvenir from the set, what would they keep? And everyone says their thing. And eventually someone goes, Hugh, what would you take? And then another one goes, now remember, Hugh, this is a child asking the question. So they have to even preface it with that. And Hugh goes,
for many years, I always take home a couple of extras.
Extra costumes.
Yeah. I've got quite a few now. And on this one, I've got a couple of very pretty extras I'm very, very pleased with. They're in my dungeon now.
This is at home. Oscar has just put his hands in front of his eyes, his hands in front of his face. And there's a great clip that I've got the picture of. We'll have to put it out on our Instagram of like exactly what I'm talking about. The rest of the cast with their literally with their head in their hands as Hugh's speaking, and the only person who's looking is Chris Pine, but he's looking upwards, sort of being like, I can't believe he's just said that. And that is them in every single interview. Like, I've written everything you said down here, and there's just too much. Like, I've written pages of all of his one-liners and crackers, and they're great, but obviously also I think I do sort of wonder, if I'm being completely honest, whether the rest of the cast are a bit like, who is this guy? Like, it's so inappropriate.
I mean, like, if you hadn't met him before, and you have to say, it worries me a little bit that Hugh he's treading the line of getting himself cancelled.
Yeah, I know. The dungeon comment is not good. It's not good.
But he's treading that line. I mean, it probably just shows that all these people, like, I think Hugh just hates the press junkets, like, and he has to have something that entertains him. Like, he's like sitting on this comment for like half an hour because he knows he has to sit through these like hour-long discussions where he's going to literally be the focus of attention for 2 minutes. So he's like, if they're going to focus on me for 2 minutes, I'm going to make this good. But I can't believe he answered an 8-year-old boy with that. That is priceless.
No, mate. This kid cannot have been older than 8. Like, it's so, and it is really funny. And the thing is, ultimately, it's harmless. But I just suppose, you know, it's right. We're teetering on the edge, and it's not good. Anyway, Oscar, we did get some actually quite interesting stuff about his character because to be honest, the one problem with the trailer is he's not fucking in it. He's literally in it for 2 seconds. Like 2 seconds.
It's like the editor's being told, don't forget Hugh's in this. You got to put 2 seconds. And he's like,
oh shit, Hugh's in this. Fuck. Okay, yeah. I mean, because I sort of thought to myself, shit, is Hugh going to be in this at all? And then I saw all the interviews and stuff. I was like, no, Hugh's there. He has to be. He's in the press junket, so he's got to be a big part of the film. And Hugh Grant, by his own volition, says this. He plays a charming con man, which for Dungeons & Dragons fans out there, it turns out he is the class of a rogue. But he didn't know what a rogue was. He said, people keep asking me these questions. I have no clue. I don't know why I'm here. So anyway, that's by the by. But he falls in with the party who trust him, although they are wrong to. So basically, yeah, rogue, con man, charming, ultimately the villain. But again, when asked whether he's the villain, Hugh Grant said, I think I'm a lot more, nuanced than that. Whereas the rest of the cast all said he's definitely an antagonist. If anything, an antagonist narcissist. Whether they were talking about his character or him, I'm not sure.
Well, you're listening to Hugh Grant taking Hugh for granted on the radio. Hugh Grant taking Hugh for granted. Oh, the podcast show.
Another piece of order for today is maybe some sad news. I'll be interested to see what you think of this. So Hugh Grant was due to be in something called Kaos, where he was playing Zeus, the god of gods, the Greek god of gods, in this sort of modern-day retelling of Greek mythology. However, Hugh Grant has pulled out of the Netflix show due to scheduling conflicts and has been replaced by Jeff Goldblum. Thoughts and feelings, please.
My sense is that potentially Hugh has dodged a bullet here.
I think so. I think that's exactly right.
After we recorded last time, and I was a lot more gung-ho about the idea of Hugh playing Zeus, but I think I've come around to the fact that maybe that was like one step too far in this sort of craziness of Hugh's Hugh-naissance. I think the dungeons role is a much better suited role for him than playing kind of the god of gods. Interesting that Jeff Goldblum has been cast because he's sort of he's the same era, sort of like kind of an oldish guy. I just can't think of. Whenever I think of Jeff Goldblum now, I just think of Hugh and Jeff in 9 months, and that.
Oh my God! Yes, yeah.
It's just like a great like little. It's just amazing that those two like get to hang out in their like prime years, and like Jeff has got like I think they both have earrings in. It's like very rogue.
Yeah, it is because doesn't Hugh start wearing an earring because he thinks that will make him hot? Yeah, and then Jeff and it's because he's hanging out. And Jeff Goldblum is absolutely ripped. If I'm not mistaken, he's constantly wearing a shirt all the way unbuttoned, and I'm like, wow, he's hot. And obviously Hugh's at his prime as well. Yeah, God, I forgot about that. That's amazing.
But how about you, Diggs? Did you have the same thought as me about this?
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the time, I was the only saving grace with this was the writer / creator made a really good TV show here in the UK called End of the Fucking World. Check it out. It's made with Netflix and Channel 4. Was brilliant. So that was the only saving grace. Otherwise, when you say Greek mythology, I'm sort of like, is this Hugh's wheelhouse? And if you say a modern day retelling, I sort of think, alarm bells are ringing. This could be bad. And the fact that they've replaced him with Jeff Goldblum sort of makes me even more worried because I'm sort of like, okay, so you don't really have the clearest vision, I'd say, for what you're actually looking for this main character to be. I mean, because Jeff Goldblum will, be sort of like this, and he's sort of charming, but in a more like kind of way. Whereas Hugh would be a lot more what I feel like Zeus would be, which is this like old grumpy, dickhead, basically. Whereas I don't know whether Jeff Goldblum will have that level of assurity and sternness and gravitas, but also complete sort of insecurity that Hugh would definitely be able to bring. And what also worried me, I suppose, about it was that Hugh was going to be the main man, which I know some people are like, what do you mean? But I think what's been so delicious about this Renaissance is that even in films that he's done, such as Florence Foster Jenkins, he's sort of cast as the side character a little bit because, and I think he's doing, in Paddington 2, he did this.
He's a supporting actor.
He's a supporting actor, and he does so well in these character roles to come in and steal the show. And a hero is only as good as his villain, and we are seeing some great villains from Hugh at the moment. And so I think that's my only issue with that as well, is that worried me. So hopefully bullet dodged, but also could just be scheduling conflicts. But something feels like it's not,
I feel like that is a very easy excuse. That's the kind of excuse. Maybe it's contract negotiations, that kind of thing. Like there's a whole plethora of reasons why someone might pull out of something like this. But an easy way to resolve it to the public is, he's too busy. That's why they keep on turning us down.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Hugh can't possibly have an interview with you guys right now. He's just a bit busy. And we're like, yeah, go on then. That's fine. He doesn't seem too busy to go to Wimbledon with his wife or, go to Comic-Con with some bloody, I don't know, Dungeons and Dustpans or whatever.
He'll fly all the way to San Diego, but he won't get on a Zoom call for 10 minutes. Jesus.
Well, I'm taking you. I'm taking you for granted. Well, I'm taking you. Well, I'm taking you for granted.
Third and final piece on the agenda for today's issue of Hugh's News is about something called Scoop, which hasn't even bloody been made yet, and I don't even know if it's been written. But essentially, you all obviously remember this. Someone, for our international listeners, Prince Andrew in this country, it was alleged that he had sex with someone named Virginia Roberts when she was 17 years old, and he had ties with the now disgraced millionaire Jeffrey Epstein and his girlfriend, who they created this big conspiratorial
sex trafficking
ring. Anyway, Prince Andrew decided to do this mental interview with Emily Maitlis, our Lord and Saviour of BBC Newsnight, Emily Maitlis, in which he essentially dug his own grave. And I think it was in Buckingham Palace, in the drawing room of Buckingham Palace where this all took place. So he invited BBC in, they sat down, had this interview where he said he literally couldn't sweat, all these sorts of crazy things. So they want to make this TV show called Scoop, which, goes into all that, where Hugh Grant would play Prince Andrew. Loads of papers here started saying that Hugh Grant was their top name on the list, but Hugh Grant tweeted one of these saying, no, I'm not in talks to play them. I've never heard of it. So there you go. Any thoughts or feelings on that?
Well, yeah, just that don't believe what you read in the papers, especially the tabloids, because they make a hell of a lot of stuff up. This being one of them. I mean, what would be in it for Hugh to play this, really? Not a whole lot. And also, what is a film going to look like for this? It's like one sit-down interview. Surely a documentary would be better, where you, you interview the people who secured the interview. You interview Emily Maitlis about how she was feeling before it, and then you have all these kind of the royal documentaries where you have these random experts, columnists in the Sun, and the royal editor of the Daily Mail who give their bullshit opinion about Meghan Markle or something. But that kind of documentary, I'm not quite sure how a film would work in this sense. But yeah, I mean, that's the power these days that social media, Twitter has, is that, you can set the record straight, which is good because,
instantly.
It's good for us as well. Otherwise we were getting all excited being oh, Hugh might be playing another role. And, it would be interesting to see this film and if he was cast in it, but it's good that he can just be nah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's funny hearing you say that about the documentary as well, and these sort of people they interviewed, historians and stuff. I'm just thinking of Tennyson Foss. Hugh Grant's Tennyson Foss obviously would be ideal being interviewed. And what you've got to think about is Prince Andrew was really there in Game of Thrones, or whatever the fuck he'd say, because it was a weird character. But anyway, yeah, I suppose in some ways, though, him playing Prince Andrew might work just because he obviously played not Nigel Thornberry, who's the fucking guy?
Thorpe.
Yes, Jeremy Thorpe, yeah, who obviously, tried to literally have someone murdered.
Yes.
And was a politician who tried to have someone murdered and all that sort of stuff, and there was that illicit homosexual affair they had. So I think this would probably be in a similar-ish vein to that, and I think that's what they're probably imagining is something very similar to a very English scandal.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's maybe the maddest thing in the world, because you do have this crazy interview, but I suppose it's all about why he did it beforehand, and I guess the fallout after that, because obviously things have gone from bad to worse now for Prince Andrew after this. I think he now doesn't do any public work with the Queen or the royal family.
Yeah, but he's still trying to get his big butt in there every time. Every time there's the Jubilee and stuff, he was kind of went rogue and Well,
no, do you remember he was announced he had COVID the week before.
Oh, really?
We had our big Jubilee. Yeah, well, a few days before it was oh no, Prince Andrew's got COVID. It's no, he fucking doesn't. He doesn't have COVID. You just don't want to have to say we're not inviting him because he's a massive nonce. Sorry, I should probably take that out. Alleged nonce. It's interesting, but the thing is, I wonder whether, because this particular thing that he retweeted said, I think what happened was basically, I wonder whether some of these news outlets got carried away. I think it was Deadline who first said that Hugh Grant was, top of their list, and it was unconfirmed. And other news outlets ran with this, and it was the one, I think, from Hello magazine that he retweeted, where they had said that he was in talks, and he said, no, I'm not in talks. I've never heard of it. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't being first on the list. So I wonder whether potentially there might still be a very, very slim chance that, well, now you're on the list, but do you want to do it? But the problem is, I wonder whether that tweet has now ruined any chances of him being in it.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking that Deadline is actually not a particularly reliable source, but we've been saying it's quite reliable, but maybe we got to in future be a bit more careful. One other piece of news, Diggs, maybe you haven't seen.
Yeah. Hit me.
But last week, I think it was last week, I saw some rumours, again, just rumours, that there may be a fourth Bridget Jones movie.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Where were these rumours? They're on deadline.com. I don't believe it.
They weren't on Deadline. I think I saw them on Twitter or somewhere. But lots of people reporting in quotes that Renee Zellweger will be making a comeback as Bridget Jones. Whether or not that would obviously include a comeback for Hugh Grant and Colin Firth is another question entirely.
Yeah.
But either way, that would be exciting to have a Bridget Jones either way. I mean, we go and see it regardless, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Absolutely, definitely, because it's, you know, so big in Hugh Grant's career, and also the films are great, whether we like him or not. Like, maybe we revive Colin Firth things first if Hugh Grant wasn't in it, and just do a second episode of that. But that would be very, very interesting. And again, we know why he didn't do the third one, because he was still not happy with the script and that sort of stuff. So if they are to do it a fourth time around, and because he you know, spoiler alert, he may well still be alive. They sort of left that as a little, you know, thing at the end of the film. So if they do a fourth one, make sure it's written well, and both him and Emma Thompson come back, because Emma Thompson was one of the best things about that third one as well. Yeah, maybe they shag. I don't know. That'd be cool. Yeah, so I'm very excited. I really hope that comes true. I'd rather he played Daniel Cleaver again than fucking Prince Andrew.
Yeah, 100%.
There you go. Well, what a way to end.
Yeah, I think we got through all the news.
Indeed. If there's any more news that we haven't been made aware of, please do let us know. You can contact us. We're at Taking Hugh for Granted on Facebook and Instagram. We're at Taking Hugh on Twitter. We are takinghughforgranted@gmail.com on the email. That's maybe the quickest I've ever said all that. Leave us a ratings or review on iTunes or Spotify. You can thumbs us up now. Give us 5 stars. We'd appreciate that. Wherever you're listening to us now, firstly, let us know. It's very nice to hear from you guys, but also give us a rating. That really helps. Other than that, I guess we'll see you next time for some more Hugh's News.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
This is the end of Hugh's News. We hope you feel very Hugh's News. About Hugh Grant. Hugh's News. And everything is very Hugh's News. And now it's time to say goodbye. Goodbye.
Hugh's News is a Taking Hugh for Granted production, and is produced, edited and presented by Diggory Waite and Oscar Beardmore Gray. The producers of Taking Hugh for Granted would like to state that this podcast is in no way associated with the actor Hugh John Mungo Grant, nor does it endorse his views or represent him in any way. Instead, by creating this podcast, Oscar and Diggory hope to celebrate Hugh's illustrious career, reliving his old classics and shedding light on some of his hidden gems. Hugh, if you're listening, we hope you approve.